Before we start, I think I'll just use this 1-2 minutes for people who are joining this for the first time. The Indian Merchant Chamber of Commerce and the Young Leaders Forum is hosting this series of 12 sessions for early stage entrepreneurs, people who are interested in startups, ventures, technology. This session has founders and VCs covering topics through various stages and aspects of a venture and a startup journey. We have had sessions where speakers have spoken on a founder's emotional and mental journey, product market fit, growth and scaling, brand building, marketing, and consumer acquisition. We have a very interesting speaker today, Siddharth, who has created the largest digital health platform in the country, PharmEasy and Ascent Pharma. So Siddharth will be covering aspects on brand building, marketing, and consumer acquisition, apart from, I think, interesting aspects on growth and the brand PharmEasy has built both from a B2B and a B2C perspective. And Siddharth has had a very holistic vision with which he has executed this from day one. Just to give a bit of context and background, PharmEasy is the largest digital health platform with the aim of making medicines accessible, convenient for all consumers. PharmEasy has been backed by institutional investors globally, which includes Temasek, Bessemer, TPG Growth, and has operations in over 1,000 towns and cities. Siddharth is one of the co-founders and the CEO of PharmEasy. He graduated from DJ Sanghvi College and completed his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Welcome, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Yash, and it's a pleasure to join all of you on this forum. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Siddharth, I think the way it will be best to structure this, if you can give a context, background, your approach, and you can take your time, and then we will consolidate question and answers over this, and a couple of questions that we have prepared, which will help early stage audience over here get a better insight of how it has been building Ascent and PharmEasy for you. Guys, if you can post your questions, we will pick up those questions and shoot it to Siddharth as the course of the session.
Thank you. So I think what I will do is this. I'll give you a little context, like you said, about myself, then my company. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, and then try and dive into more of Q&A. So I'm helpful and more productive, to give ideas or solutions to questions that you guys have. So my background is that I'm born and brought up here in Mumbai. My parents are doctors. I have been inspired by them all my life. My dad came from very humble beginnings and humble background. Was born into literally like a small shanty or a chota chupda in somewhere in Malad. Worked very hard, got educated, became a successful cardiologist. But apart from that, he also worked very hard to also become an entrepreneur in his own right. Established a couple of hospitals, and he's the one who actually inspired me to continue to do big, dream big, so on and so forth. But when I was young, I had no interest in academics or in business. Much like a lot of us, I actually wanted to be a sportsman. I wanted to be a race car driver. I was fortunate that I had the ability to follow that passion, because I then went on to become the national go-karting champion for 3 years in a row. And I was really considering a career in motorsports by giving up academics. Fortunately or otherwise, I broke a few bones in my right ankle when I was 16, and that was the end of my motorsports career. The only thing that I could do then is to figure out what do I do as my education. And I never wanted to be a doctor, so I did what everybody does, कि चलो engineer बन जाते हैं. So I went to DJ Sanghvi College, became a computer science engineer. I was lucky and fortunate to get into IIM Ahmedabad right after my engineering. So I was amongst the youngest of the batch. At 21, I got into IMA. At 22, I interned with Goldman Sachs in the investment banking team. Those 2 months were the best 2 months of my life, because I realized that I'm absolutely unfit for any kind of job. So I came back to campus and I put in my papers for the placement process and said I'll go start something by myself. And I graduated at 23 with almost no clue what I want to do in my life. Um the only thing that I knew is that there was going to be a ton of support from my family, from my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, who's an orthodontist and also a successful entrepreneur in her own right. So, as I keep saying, I'm the only black swan in the family that's not a doctor because my dad's a cardiologist, mother's a pediatrician, and I'm married to an orthodontist. But leaving that aside, I was joined by my co-founder Hardik, and the backstory is that Hardik and I were extremely close friends in engineering. Uh, when the placement process was going on at IIM, because I was not part of the placement process, I had actually gone to the US to do something, and then I ended up at Vegas for a couple of nights, and Hardik joined me over there. And on one of those famous nights in Vegas, I told him, "Yeah, I'm not taking up a job. I'm doing something by myself." And he said, "Yes, whenever you do something, I will join you." Uh, and when I graduated, I pinged him and I called him. Boss, ab aaja wapas. It's time. And for 1 hour he was stunned, and then I called him up and I gave him some very nice French words, and I told him, Bhai, you had promised me in Vegas. What happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas, right? It continues. He was kind uh, and understanding enough to actually put in his papers within 1 hour of that call, and he wrote an email to the CEO of NetApp because he had done his masters at CMU. He was always the smarter one. Told his CEO at NetApp that, hey, I'm going to resign. And then he informed his parents that I've already resigned and I'm coming back to India on a one-way ticket a month later. And 26th June 2012 is when we started our first venture by the name of Dial Health. Dial Health was an online pharmacy, dare I say India's first online pharmacy, which was also a call order pharmacy. We had this cool sounding phone number 4000 but to our utter dismay and to our utter dejection, that venture failed. And it failed for a very simple reason that when somebody called and ordered for a medicine, it had the same issues that you will have with any chemist that you go to today. Number one, most chemists are subscale in the sense that they're about 3 to 400 square foot in size, cannot store more than 3 to 4,000 medicines. So how many ever of you have ever gone to a chemist with a prescription and the chemist has told you मेरे पास ये दवाई है ये दवाई नहीं है, right? He'll most likely never have all the medicines. It's not the chemist's fault. The fault is that there are 200,000 or 2 lakh medicines in India, and there are less than 4,000 available for storage at a chemist. It's not mathematically possible to have all the medicines, and which is why your fill rates are about 50 to 60%. So we said, okay, people came to us with orders. We went to the chemist. Chemist never had all the medicines. People called us and gave us galis. So we said, acha chalo, let's move ahead and do something better. So we moved on from our first mistake to our second mistake. And that second mistake was opening up a chain of retail stores. Because we realized that what is a problem at one chemist now gets compounded at 20 chemists, right? Because each of these chemists were small and we still had the same issue. So we thought, hey, you know what, we are these whiz kids from IIM and he's a computer engineer and this, that, and others, and you know what, like we can do some outstanding work and so on and so forth. But then we realized that also is not working. By then, our third co-founder Harsh had joined me. Harsh was my senior at engineering, and then he had done his MBA. And we realized one thing, that the problem at the chemist is that in any ecosystem, if the front end is fragmented, the back end is consolidated. What that means is, today, if you look at take a simple example of a doodhwala. A doodhwala will not have a lot of inventory, but he gets that replenished every day, every couple of hours, right? Or your breadwala. You get fresh stock, fresh produce every few hours. You place an order and you will get it. Unfortunately, that was not the case with something like pharmacies. You had to deal with a distributor of Cipla on a Monday, a distributor of somebody else on a Tuesday, a distributor of somebody else on a Wednesday, so on and so forth, right? As you continue to keep growing this and you look at the problem, it becomes compounded over a period of time. And how does it become compounded over a period of time? That you have 200 pharma companies and you're dealing with different people, different distributors every day. What we thought is that because the consumer part is fragmented, at least the supply chain has to be integrated, and when the supply chain wasn't integrated, that was a big opportunity for us to do that. So it was only third time lucky that by the end of 2013, we shut down dialL.com, we shut down the dialL stores and decided to focus on the distribution piece. Now in the distribution piece, we have this trade body of all the distributors called the AIOCD that is not very welcoming of new people coming into the ecosystem. Uh, it had its norms, it had its ways of working and so on and so forth. So he said, look, we don't want to disrupt the existing Apple cart because everybody else was coming and trying to bypass the channel. We said we don't want to bypass the channel. Why can't we become friends with the channel? So what we decided is that we'll partner with distributors, create a front end, acquire their distribution rights, pay them the money for that, and then create a channel that can ensure that retailers can now get access to all the products, right? So you tie up with distributor A of Sun Pharma, distributor B of Cipla, distributor C of Dr. Reddy's, distributor D of Torrent, and create a front end. And that front end will ensure that irrespective of which company's products you want, you will get them on tap and on demand and instantaneously. And that was the big transformative move for us. As that business was continuing and we became really large in the back end, a lot of guys in the front end started coming to us, right? The new age of online pharmacy started coming to us and so on and so forth. And all of these people uh, uh, started coming and saying that can we now come and can we want to start our front end and we want to make it big, can you come and become our back end with us or not, right? And we were very happy doing that. But the only word that I can find in dictionary of any language is the word kida. We still had the kida of doing the front end and said, why don't we now launch Pharmeasy, right? That we don't want to just solve the back end for others, we want to create our own front end. And that's how we had two entities. We had one entity that was creating the supply chain and connecting the distributors and the pharma companies to the retailers. The second end was using these retailers and connecting the retailers to the consumers, right? And that's how two different entities and two different work streams started, one on the B2B part and one on the B2C part. Now you fast forward that ahead. Today we are the largest digital healthcare platform in India. At the back end, we connect about 3,000 plus pharma companies and 3,000 distributors to 80,000 retailers in India. It is the largest network of retailers in India connected on any one single platform, whether physical or digital. We are present in 114 cities of India on the back end. Through these retailers and through these partnerships, we then serve through our Pharmeasy app. We serve about 1.5 million, that is roughly 15 lakh patients every single month. This also includes the patients that we touch through the MedLife app, which we just acquired about 6 months back. And through Pharmeasy and MedLife, we now touch these patients. What we've also done to complete the patient experience, we also launched a telemedicine service, which is a captive service for our patients, and we do about 5 lakh teleconsultations a month. And we are also investing heavily in digitizing the doctor's clinic, because we believe that the ecosystem has four large players. There is the pharma company, there is the pharmacy, there is the patient, and there is the practitioner. And we are creating a digital ecosystem that is connecting each part of the ecosystem. And we believe that once this part of the ecosystem is digitized and your treatment bit is digitized, treatment is actually the highest frequency, highest touch point, and highest spend category in the outpatient segment. So what I mean is, if you are a patient, typically your cycle is you fall ill, you'll seek for information. Then if it becomes a little worse, you'll go to a doctor for consultation. A doctor will then tell you to go and do a test, and after doing the test, after seeing the results, you'll be given a treatment. If you look at the spend pattern for people who have chronic issues, non-communicable disease like call it diabetes or hypertension or so on and so forth, you will see that 75% plus of their spend is on treatment and medicines. You actually end up spending about 2,000 rupees a month on medicine, which is about 24,000 a year. You don't actually spend more than 2,000 rupees seeing a doctor. Even if you see the doctor twice a year, that's still 4,000 rupees, and the cost of doing your test is generally not more than 3 to 4,000 rupees a year. So if your total spend is 32,000, out of that 24,000 is actually spent on medicines and treatment. So if you take care of that category, highest frequency, highest touch point, then you can create a holistic solution where you may or may not be the lab, and you never want to replace the doctor in India. In India, doctors are still considered Bhagwan. You don't want to bypass them. You want to partner with them, right? And that's how you create a holistic outpatient healthcare ecosystem, and that is what we are trying to do. So sorry if I took about 15 minutes of time, but I just wanted to lay a little bit of my personal context, a little bit of our journey. A lot of us know about the success we had since 2015, but nobody knows the struggle from 2012 to 2015, right? But that's a little bit about me, our company, and how we got here.
Siddharth, I think you made it sound like a fairy tale because there are so many things which are moving around to deliver the proposition that you're delivering to the entire ecosystem of pharma companies, pharmacies, clinicians, and patients. So before I jump into the brand, the customer acquisition piece of the Siddharth, I just wanted to know, and I think want you to go into bits and pieces of how did you enable this? Because first of all, you were parallelly building a B2B company and a B2C company. What I believe is you accessed different pools of capital to build both of this, right? And you accessed private equity, Everstone over there to build the B2B piece, and you got venture to build the B2C piece. That itself would have been a challenge. So if you can walk us through, what were those challenges? How did you think it through? Was it when you converted into or you thought about a distribution company, was it the entire blueprint of the playbook of who you are today clear to you then, or it evolved? How did it evolve? So I think if we can delve into your thought processes at each of these pivotal milestones, it will be very helpful for all the early stage entrepreneurs over here.
See, look, I think there is no, let me put it this way. I think whatever we've done is a combination of three things, right? It's a combination of passion, persistence, but also more importantly, pivot. And I'll tell you what I mean, right? I think the dream of trying to create something in outpatient healthcare was there from the day or even before I left college, right? In fact, the real start of my journey happened while I was at IIM Ahmedabad. In the final year, I had actually taken a course on entrepreneurship, and under Professor Anil Gupta, I had actually created a blueprint of creating India's first online pharmacy, and that was my final year project at IMA. And Professor Gupta was very serious. He actually made me incorporate a company while I was on campus, saying कि तू तो job भी नहीं करने वाला है तो शुरू कर. And that is the company which is still surviving till today, right? So you never know what project you do, what you do with the passion that you do, where it will take you up, right? So you have to learn to take chances, and you take chances, and you take chances very, very proactively, and that is where your passion kicks in. In terms of models, right? The persistent thing was to try and do something, right? To try and make it big. But if you look at my journey, I never had any idea, right? I started digitally, then realized you have to have partner with retail stores, then realized, oh, you have to have retail stores, then you said, oh, you can't do any of this, you have to solve for the supply chain, uh, right? I think at every stage you evolve, right? And that is where your pivot comes in. So I think if you have passion and perseverance, but if you don't have pivot, you don't have the ability to look at yourself and say, hey, am I doing right or am I doing wrong? And you don't have the ability to change. At the same time, if you keep on pivoting far too frequently and you don't have persistence, you will never move ahead, right? And in all of this, you need to have passion and you need to have first principles thinking, because you will keep facing issues, you will keep facing problems at all points of time, but you need to be pushing through, right? So I think the point is, it's very, very difficult to say that will you have a blueprint. You will never have a blueprint. You will have a sense of the destination, right? You will never have a sense of the journey, and along the journey you'll have to keep moving along, but at every stage you'll also have to reevaluate, am I moving the right direction or no, right? Otherwise you'll just keep trudging along in the wrong direction. So that's where it is, right? So you evolve, right? So we got a private equity partner in one part of the business, we created a subsidiary, we got a VC in the second part of the business, then we thought, no, it doesn't make sense, we put all of that back together and raise growth capital. You learn, you evolve, but I think you will get partners along the way who will understand you, who will trust you, and who you will trust, to say, look, we don't have the perfect answers today, but as we keep moving along, we'll get better answers, and as new data points keep coming in, we'll change our direction, right? We'll keep the same goal, and I think that is how you'll have to take it. So if anybody says that I had a blueprint on day zero, I think massive respect for those people, right? And I'm sure that they are geniuses and few and far between, but I think people like me and a lot of people like me only know the end goal, but don't necessarily know the journey, and you can only connect the dots looking back.
Got it. So Siddharth, I think let me go into the brand building, the consumer journey of these aspects. So, first of all, I think a pharmacy is a business, and medicine generally is a business which has a lot of, as a brand, has to get a lot of customer trust. Was it something that the founders were conscious from day one, and how did you approach building trust? And on both channels, your B2B channels and your B2C channels, because a trust was from a customer perspective. Also, the trust was because it's highly regulated as an industry, from various players in the ecosystem, whether it is distributors, retailers, as well as various regulators. So how did you approach that?
So I think the point is that ultimately your trust is in your uh, in the way you are going about in your regular day-to-day life, right? In the sense that uh, there are a lot of opportunities to kind of take shortcuts, right? But we kind of never took them. And let me give you examples, right? I think everybody said don't take shortcuts in life, take hard works in life, so on and so forth. But in our earlier days, whenever we were partnering and creating pharmacies, uh, we could have started from zero and said that we'll keep everything to ourselves. But we actually went about trying to partner hospitals, right? And said, why don't we open up pharmacies within hospitals? The hospital already has some trust. Now that means that we may have to shell out a larger part of our profit to them, but can we go and leverage that trust to create something better for us, right? When we started the distribution, we had an option of saying we'll go against everybody. We said, why don't you figure out where you can partner, right? Can we acquire some distributors? Can we partner with them, so on and so forth, right? So likewise, even when we have to deal with customers, our first option is there a pharmacy that we can partner, right? I think if you are open to creating partnerships and genuinely open to creating partnerships, right, not for the sake of it, that trust inherently comes in the system because people believe that this is a guy that is wanting to grow but is willing to take me along. Now, obviously, in that willing to take me along, if I partner with 80,000 pharmacies, my value is equal to, and if each of them, let's assume, is earning 1 rupee, I will earn 1 into 80,000, 80,000 rupees, right? Now, I could have said I want their 1 rupee also and my 1 rupee also, and I want 1,60,000 rupees for the sake of argument. I could have done that. But then I don't know what is the kind of scale that would have come or how soon would it have come, right? Maybe I could have been only 10,000 pharmacies, right? And I could have been that 10,000 into 2 being 20,000 versus now I'm 80,000 into 1, which is 80,000. So I think if you genuinely go with an intent of partnering and figuring out how you can do the best, uh, I think then some of these things become much more easier, right? Now, this is not to say that life is not a zero sum game. To a large extent, there is a zero sum, right? But that zero sum doesn't have to be that you are 100 and others are 0. It could also be that you are 60 and others are 40, or you are 70 and others are 30. And I think the moment you build that, at least in the B2B context, people see that this guy is willing to partner and grow along with you, right? And I think earlier people were in denial of competition, right? Whenever competition came, there were issues. People used to do all kinds of agitations and so on and so forth. I think now everybody is going to digital. Everybody knows the world is changing, right? Everybody wants to change and people want to come along. But people want to change when you are willing to take them along, and they are very happy that way. And I think likewise for customers, I think the simple thing is don't scale what you can't deliver, right? To give you an example, we are very strong in the diagnostic segment, but we work with partners, right? We are not full stack. We don't have our own labs yet. With the increase or the spike in COVID, we are getting tremendous demand. Now we could have said, yeah, let's capture all the demand that we can and pass it on to labs. We are as it is a lead generator. Aage then kya hota hai, let's see. When we realized that labs were unable to fulfill more than 50-60% of the orders that we were passing them along in the SLA that we had set, we actually shut that down. Sometimes it's okay to let the revenue go, but I know that I don't want a Farmeasy customer to ever feel that Farmeasy did not deliver on what they had said, right? So I think for me, trust is the ability to partner with people genuinely and create a situation as far as possible which is win-win. And number two, your ability to say no even at the cost of revenue or economics or profit, to do the right thing, right? I think, and these are some examples of what I'm giving you, right? And there will be several more, but if you are able to do this, I think in the long run trust is generated. I don't think trust is generated only when you say uh, uh, yes to everything. It's also when uh, you know um You have the ability to say no for the right thing.
Fair. Um, just extending that, Siddharth. See, at each stage, I think you added stakeholders into the ecosystem, which bettered the value prop for the customer. Possibly when you got retailers as a part of the equation, that increased your delivery time to the consumer. Can you walk us through the from 2012 to 2021 today? How has the value prop of PharmEasy bettered for your eventual consumer? Uh, and hence, how has the addition of various stakeholders bettered that?
See, I think addition.
So, in a way, what I'm asking is, was there a North Star that you said that, okay, I have to keep on reducing my delivery time to the consumers, I have to keep on increasing my fill rate to the consumers, and like, how did all of this like fit together to do that?
See, I think, like I said, your North Star is that, I mean, I think life is that way very simple and we make all of it very complicated, right? If I can deliver the best quality medicines to the customer in the fastest possible time, at the best rate, and with a superior experience, that is all that you need, right? I mean, you just have to do four things: best product, fastest time, best rate, and superior experience, right? I think we complicate it by giving it a lot of jargons and so on and so forth. Now, to do that, if I want to deliver things in 1 hour or 2 hours, either I create stores in every zip code of Mumbai, let's take Mumbai for example, or I partner with somebody. Now, it's always a trade-off. If I partner with somebody and I want to give the best rates, then three people have to benefit. I have to make money, the retailer has to make money, and the customer has to get the benefit. Now, if I run the whole thing, the retailer doesn't have to make money. It's just me and the customer. So you weigh the option of saying, is the retailer making money going to make it better, smoother, and more efficient, or me making more money but having to take more hassles? What is the you weigh these two things, right? The incremental profit when you do it yourself versus the pain, and that profit also can sometimes be notional because there is no guarantee that you open up in Mumbai, let's say 100 stores, and each of those stores will be profitable, right? Can you leverage the existing network to make it sooner and better, right? And whenever we found that answer to be yes, we went ahead and we partnered, right? Now, obviously, you will have models where you say, look, as I keep doing more and more business, or I keep getting you more and more business, increasingly you will give me better economics, right? I mean, and that's simple logic. If I get you one customer, you will give me X rupees. If I get you 100 customers, you will give me Y rupees. But if I give you 1,000 customers, you will give me Z rupees. Anybody and everybody is happy to make that trade-off, right? But if you can leverage that strength so that your customer experience is best, then it's awesome. But now you have to weigh off the other thing also. A retailer will not always have the inventory. If the retailer doesn't have the inventory, will you give a broken experience? No. Then will you invest in the supply chain so that at least you can get the products from your warehouse to the retailer and then do the last mile? Yes. Right? So at every point of time, you still keep the same North Star saying that is it faster, cheaper, better, and more convenient. And if you're able to put those and balance those, you'll never move all of these in lockstep, right? So to make it faster, cheaper, and better, the cost will be very high, right? Or the convenience will go down, right? These are all levers, and you will have to start managing those levers. But over a period of time, I think you will start finding a balance in all of these things.
Sure, fair enough. Siddharth, the second thing is, your product cuts across customers of all ages, one, and the second is across various geographies. And let's take it one by one. And also, I think various channels, whether it is B2B, B2C. So, what is the brand construct of PharmEasy on the B2B channel, on the B2C channel? Do you break it on the basis of customers who are between 20 to 30, 30 to 40? How do you look at your customer segmentation from that perspective, and how is that brand architecture of PharmEasy built?
So I think that way our brand is pretty simple. Our idea is to, like like we like to call, simplifying healthcare and impacting lives. I think for us it's very simple. We want to make this entire process easy and convenient, and that goes across information, consultation, tests, and treatment. Right? I think that's a very simple premise. And the good thing is our brand or our products are used by people from the day they are born till the day they are dead, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you don't target a particular set of customers, you do. But the great thing, or like I said, is that our target segment is literally people across all age groups, right? I mean, both males and females needed, people at all age groups needed. Uh, we started as a service which was really useful for people with non-communicable diseases or people who are elders who have diabetes, hypertension, blood pressure. But if you see, we are now giving a very young, fun tone to our brand, right? In terms of where it is, because Farm Easy is, I mean, basically we have our song and a lot of people would have heard that jingle, right? Farm Easy, Farm Easy. The idea is we are trying to create something in healthcare and saying that don't worry, you don't need to take stress. We are there, right? We'll make it, like I said, faster, cheaper, better, and more convenient for you, right? And something that will exemplify trust. So that is our idea, and we're now seeing that uh, earlier medicines were only taken for illness. A lot of medicines, especially after COVID, are also taken for wellness, right? People at young age groups are also taking vitamins, supplements, nutrients, so on and so forth, right? And our idea is to ideally go out to this entire segment. And we are moving from being just an online pharmacy to an online health destination, right? And I think that is a huge white space which is not taken, and which is what we're doing for consumers, right? And I think as far as B2B is concerned, we are replicating the same services on B2B. We are offering retailers the choice of products across illness, wellness, prescription medicines, OTC. Slowly but surely, we'll also start partnering them for diagnostic services, and we'll start providing them services for consultation on cloud, right? So if you go to a retailer and there is an issue, he'll help you connect to a doctor, help you with insurance, so on and so forth, right? So the idea is you take the same brand architecture and the same thing, but we need to like literally do things where whether you buy medicines, tests, or consultation, whether you do it online or offline, whether you need the service delivered at home or picked up in a store or a clinic, right? We want to touch the customer in all angles. That's the idea.
But don't you think that the customer would get confused? And I just would be very interested to understand how do you think about it. And particularly, I think your customer, which will be in SEC 1 India, and the customer which is there in like tier 5 towns, like how do they navigate through all of these use cases? And how have you thought through the product with respect to that and the brand with respect to that?
So I'll give you an example. We ideally would want to become and I know it's a very high bar, but like the HDFC Bank of the country, right?
Sure.
What I understand is a large part of their business, they are not just winning in metros, but the place where they're really winning is semi-urban and rural India, right? And their USP is that if you go to some other bank and if you go to their main branch in, let's say, Mumbai or their HO, your loan gets sanctioned in maybe 10 minutes. You go to a branch which is in a tier 2 city, maybe the loan gets sanctioned in 1 day. And if you go to like a tier 3, tier 4 city, the loan gets sanctioned in 5 days, because the devolution of power is that way. Uh, in HDFC Bank, from what I understand, irrespective of which branch you go to, if you are eligible, you'll get your loan in 10 minutes, right? The idea is that you are creating a uniform service experience and not saying that, hey, I am only going to go after a certain category of person or certain category of customer, right? We are not a product which is elite. We are not a product which is like, it's not fashion, it's not cosmetics, so on and so forth. We are a product which is used by anybody and everybody. Diabetes doesn't come only to people who are affluent or people who are in slums, right? It can come to anybody and everybody at all age groups. Our idea is to make our brand universally acceptable and trustworthy, right? So today you will see that there are people in tier 2, tier 3 also who want an aspirational bank. Right now, obviously, a large lot of people want to go to PSU banks because they are more comfortable saying it's the government's money. But the people who are little aspirational, right, would prefer to go to HDFC Bank. And obviously, people like me and you will go to HDFC Bank over here, right? So that is the kind of premise on which we are going, right? So we want to create a trust, mass market, fun loving brand, saying that don't take healthcare too seriously. We've come by your side and we are here to solve it for you, kind of a thing.
Understood. And can you give us examples where it has been difficult and how you navigated that? Because also one of the interesting thing is that you're doing this as a platform, right? So there's a distributor that maybe Pharmacy has lesser control on what that distributor sells to the retailer, what the retailer sells to the customer. I think any one deterrent will, I think, take your entire journey a few steps back. So how do you actively manage it? Because I also I have known you for some time, and I've got an opportunity of knowing you over there. And you are like, I see you constantly having a very clear picture of where you want to be. So if you can run us through that, please.
Sure, sure, sure. Uh, so, look, um the way we think about it is that there will primarily, if there is any producer and there is a platform, there is always going to be competition and cooperation between them. To give you an example, uh, Amazon is one of the largest retailers or resellers for Apple products, right? Uh, Apple would obviously want to sell the products by itself directly and not have Amazon, right? But if Apple is not on Amazon, they'll lose a ton of sales. Likewise, if Amazon doesn't have Apple, right, you'll not go to Amazon saying, hey, yeah, they don't keep Apple products, right? If Amazon only kept Samsung products, you wouldn't go there. So they both need each other, but at the same time, there is always going to be tension, right? Apple will not want to give more margins, Amazon will want more margins. And this is just a very simple example of how competitive tension and cooperation keeps coming into the ecosystem, right? And I think as this competitive tension and cooperation keeps coming into the ecosystem, you keep evolving. And I think that is what you, for a lot of us who've studied economics, is where your demand and supply curve will come, right? Where you say that market forces will ultimately align, right? The push and pull. This is where it will come, right? In a free market, that is how it progresses. Now it's very easy to give this economic theory, but on ground there are always challenges, right? You will have somebody who's wanting to work with you, somebody not wanting to work with you. Somebody says, hey, because if that guy is not there, now I have extra volume. Can I now come and partner with these guys because now I'll get a big volume? All of these things can keep happening, right? Now, I think the most important thing is you have to accept it as a part of your day-to-day life. If you don't accept this as a part of your day-to-day life and you are mentally fighting this, you will never be at peace. You have to be able to sleep peacefully at night saying that of my 100 partners, 5 will be unhappy. You will try and convince them. Maybe 2 of those will leave, 3 will stay back. The next day, another 5 will have a problem. Again, you will convince them, 3 will be unhappy, 3 will but still stay back, 2 will leave. On the next day, 4 new people will come and join and partner you. That is part and parcel of life. If anybody is going to say, I will have partner A and partner B and lifelong it will continue, that is only going to happen with you and your co-founders and so on and so forth, right? Whenever two companies are on different sides of the table, no matter how well you even cooperate, right? Even when you have joint ventures, let's say that you are a fintech company that is a joint venture with a bank. The bank loves the business that you're giving it, right? Right, and you love the fact that, oh, the bank is continuing to give me loans. Let's imagine you're a loan aggregator. And someday you will tell the banky boss, I want more money now. Right, and someday the bank will be worried, ki, boss, a large part of my business is going through this guy. How do I reduce my dependency? This is part and parcel of life. If anybody is going to run away from it or fight, it is then you are living in a mythical world. Right? At some point of time, you will compete and cooperate, but that is part and parcel, right? And I think if you maintain that tension in a healthy way, then people will love to work with you. But right, but if you are going to say, hey, you know what, only I will make money, the guy before me cannot make money, the guy after me will not make money, I think it can work in for a short run, but right, but then over a period of time, people call that monopoly. And then monopoly has its own way of starting and ending.
Sure. Siddharth, I think just moving to the next part, you said that, like for example, people are moving towards more wellness, right? Now, how does PharmEasy, approaches this to capture this part of the consumer requirement? Because there's a certain construct with which PharmEasy has been built till now. So how are you navigating this? How are you approaching this? If there are examples of how have you approached navigating your or pivoting your infrastructure towards a massive changing consumer requirement or a consumer trend?
I think, look, we all have to evolve with time, right? I mean, otherwise we can get displaced from our position by the next young kid who's part of this group, right? And who's thinking even better than me, even ahead of me, right? So we constantly have to keep evolving, and unless we disrupt ourselves and move ahead, it's not going to happen, right? And I think that happens with us also, right? So and if you look at our evolution, that is evident, right? We started by being just an aggregator, then we opened up retail, then we did backend, then we said, oh, we'll do the backend, but we'll partner for the front end. I think that is an evolution, right? So in our own journey, there has been 4 or 5 evolutions, right? And I think who's to say that a new evolution won't come 2 years later, right? It will continue to happen.
Yeah, fair. And if you can just run us through the use case of how are you adopting to take care of the wellness requirement of the consumer now? How are you investing over there? What are your thoughts around over there? It will just give a sense of how are you thinking and how do you think through these changing consumer trends?
So to give you an example, right, I think we have been primarily focused on medicines so far, right?
Yeah,
Uh, Last year, 99% of our GMV was medicines. This year, that 99 has come down to 90%, right? About 6-7% is OTC products and 3 to 4% is diagnostics, right? I think same time next year we'll want the medicine to come down to 85%. Because what we realize is that people like you and me, unfortunately, we fall ill, we'll take a medicine, uh, but that is once in maybe 2 years or 3 years, right? But you and I will continue to take vitamins, supplements, OTC products, so on and so forth, right? And if you go to an average chemist today, a good chemist, right? 70% of their sales are medicine, but 30% is OTC products. But we never built that out, right? And it requires a very different mindset, right? When you go for medicines, it is a search mindset. And what I mean by search mindset is, if your doctor has told you to take an insulin, you will search for an insulin and take an insulin. It is not a discovery category like fashion where I'll show you 100 t-shirts and you will select what you like, right? So I can't tell you, hey, when you come to search insulin, hey, by the way, here's a great offer on a medicine for cholesterol. You will say, मैं क्या करूँ? Even if you give me cholesterol medicine for free, I'll put it in the dustbin, right? So we are a very search heavy category. We are moving from search heavy to also discovery. Because when you want a wellness product, right, you want a thick shake, you will look at 5 products. When you want to buy a vitamin supplement, you'll look at 5 products, right? So there is a difference in that mindset, right? And these are small differences that you will not realize till you go to market. The architecture of the app, the UI UX, the manner in which you store the products. Now, for all your medicines, you need a prescription. So you need to have a pharmacist who will consult the patient. For OTC products, you don't need that. That's an entirely different use case. How do you validate the orders at the back end, right? So these are use cases that keep coming, right? But to give you an example, we moved from 99 and 1 to 90-10, and hopefully same time next year will be between 80 to 85% on the illness part and between 15 to 20% on the wellness part.
sure. Sure. Siddharth, moving to the segment of competition, there everyone which is large is trying to enter this category. Reliance is, Amazon is. Um, like, how are you preparing yourself for that? What are your thoughts around over there? I think it will be very important. And at this point of time, a strong brand will even be more important. So how are you thinking about your brand from that perspective, and how are you thinking about competition from these larger players who will come into this category?
Look, I think
And people are trying to approach it in different ways, right? Amazon, as you said, maybe discovery first. Like India Bulls Dhani is trying to make it, a doctor-patient call first and a faster delivery of medicines. Um, uh, uh, I think your thoughts around over there.
look, my view there is that we are still very small, right? We are still about 2.5% of the entire market. I think this is not a winner takes all market. This is not like certain sectors where just 3-4 players will stay. In effect, if you see, there are 8 lakh players in this market, right? Uh, I don't think we are in the game or race of market share. Frankly, we can't compete with the capital or the brand that some of these people have created today. Uh, so you have to realize your strengths and your weaknesses, and for them, it is giving one more thing to their existing set of customers. For us, this is the only thing that we do. So we have to keep creating our deep sectoral modes and be relevant for our set of consumers, right? And the idea is not to say, hey, am I number one out of these 8 lakh, or am I number two, or am I number three, or number five? The idea is to keep yourself relevant to your set of customers, right? And Yash, I'll borrow some of the examples that you had given me. That if you theoretically today look at DMart as an example, is it as large as Reliance Retail? No, right? But is it still very relevant to the customers that it serves? Absolutely yes, right? I think we are very happy saying that we are the number two or the number three or even the number five for that matter as an example, right? And not worry about market share, but worry about our absolute growth. So long as our absolute growth is in the range that we want. So long as our economics are there, if somebody else comes and becomes large, I think we are very happy for them, right? And I think frankly we are nobody to comment on competition, right? Our idea is that we want to continue on our journey. Now, if this was a market where there were 5 players and each had 20% market share, and a new person was going to come and take away 40%, that means that the other 5 people will go from 100 to 60. We are not in that market. We are just 2 to 3%. If in 10 years time we become 10% and somebody else becomes 20%, that's fine. We will still both have another 70% of market to go after, right? So I think that is the beauty of the market that we are in, right? That we are still very small and there is massive headroom to grow, and there is not headroom for one person, there is headroom for 5 new people to grow, and everybody will have their own value proposition in terms of what they want to give the consumer. We want to focus on our value proposition, which is 360-degree connect, right? That we want to be across everything online to offline, right? And across information, consultation, test and treatment, right? And whether it is online or offline, delivered at home or in store, that is what we want to do, right?
Got it. And just from a competition perspective, one thing, Siddharth, will be very interesting to get your view on. Like, you would have seen large trends playing out in this 8 years of your journey. Geo would possibly be one. If you can touch us through, I think, what are these 2, 3 large trends that you have seen, and how PharmEasy had caught on to that tailwind, if I would say so.
Look, I think geo tailwind is a massive tailwind for across the country, right? I mean, the democratization and access of data. I think to a fair degree, every Indian tech entrepreneur owes a part of their success to geo. But I think an even larger compliment must actually go out to the government, right? I think we are all people on this forum are educated and so on and so forth, and we are all very very active in criticizing the government when something goes wrong. I think the Digital India mission, the digitization that has been undertaken by this government, uh, the way they have built upon Aadhaar, which was though started by the previous government and come here, is just unbelievable, right? If we believe that digitization is not all pervasive, then I think we are fooling ourselves, right? Uh, there is I read a quote by someone very big a couple of days back that in the US, even today, vaccination or vaccine passports are written on paper versus you
Yeah.
have a QR code on your phone.
Yeah.
UPI is one of the largest micro payments network in the world, right? The West went from uh, card to check, sorry, cash to check, check to card, and card to now digital. We've gone from cash to digital like this, right? Today you have the ability to do an eKYC sitting in some part of the remotest part of the country and getting your eKYC done, opening up your bank account, this, that, and the others. The amount of digitization and democratization of data that you see is unbelievable. And I don't think we are here to create a model which is replicating the West or even replicating China. We have to create a model for India. India is unique, India is large, and India has its own structural advantages, right? We have to learn how, without spending billions of dollars on physical infrastructure, how can we overlay digital on top of it and make our physical infrastructure far more efficient. And that is what we are also trying to do to a very small extent, right? So under what this government has done under the Digital India plan, promotion of startups, the amount of capital that is coming in, I think we don't all congratulate or recognize that part that is happening, right? So one part is this entire digital push is making people aware. And I think the third thing, which is unfortunate, right, but which is a reality, is that COVID has taught us all to live with resilience.
Hmm.
All started doing things that we were uncomfortable doing in the past,
Hmm.
right? I was uncomfortable, for example, or my parents were uncomfortable few years back to go into net banking, right? They always had worries, Arey, yaar, what if somebody takes my password? Arey, what if somebody does this? Arey, what if somebody does that? Right? They all love pen and paper. Now they started doing that, right? My parents are doctors. They would always frown upon that. Oh, how can I digitally talk to people? Oh, I have to meet people. Today the world has started doing things on Zoom, right? There are so many use cases that we were not doing that COVID has taught us. And COVID has taught us resilience, COVID has taught us adaptability. And people who are now able to take this, right, the ability to ride on the digital push and digital infrastructure of the government, the democratization of data, and the ability of Indians to be resilient, break stereotypes, and adopt technology in uncomfortable situations is actually giving rise to tremendous amount of new opportunities, right? And I think if you don't do this, I am telling you, we will miss out on the next golden decade of entrepreneurship in this country, right? So for me, these are the three big things which are happening, right? And this uncomfortable thing is not just for consumers; it's even for retailers. Did we think that till 2 years back retailers would adopt technology at the pace at which they are? No. But at the same time, a lot of people still believe and want to believe that, oh, our retailers don't want to digitalize. That is not the case. Please go and talk to a retailer, right? He is using his net banking. He's ordering his food from Swiggy, right? Do you think that the kirana wala doesn't want to go digital? He wants to go digital, but he wants to do it with a partner who he knows will be his partner and not screw him over tomorrow, right? But if you create the right tools and do, he wants to become digital because his children are coming home and he's watching things on Hotstar and NetApp and Netflix and so on and so forth, right? So everybody, B2B, B2C, everybody wants to go digital. Everybody is resilient and wants to change the way they are working, right? And there is this great push from the government which has made lot of things which were earlier unthought of, right? Did you ever think that you could have your, your photo ID on your phone which is accepted? You go to an airport, you show on your phone. Because the government has done more digital things than what you can imagine, right? And that has transformed the lives of millions and billions of people. We have to be able to perceive it and catch that rather than criticizing हमारे देश में ये नहीं है वो नहीं है.
Siddharth, can you build on this by giving some stats? जैसे आप बोल रहे थे that you are doing about 5 lakh consultations a day, something which you thought will be very difficult because this market is so fragmented. I think because of all of these three levers, there's a huge tailwind towards that.
Yeah, massive. To give you that same example, right? Let's start with retailers, right? Same time last year, 40,000 retailers were digitally transacting with us. It took us 7 years to get 40,000 retailers. It took us 1 year to go from 40,000 to 80,000, right? In same time last year, we were in 35 cities. Now we are in 115 cities. There are small towns where retailers are partnering with us, right? So this is one big example of how people are coming along. Let me give you another example. The proportion of consultations that were happening physically, same time last year were around 8.5 lakhs. The consultations happening digitally were 3 lakhs. In the middle of the pandemic, there were 4 lakh physical consultations and 8 lakh digital consultations, right? Now people thought that why is this happening? Doctors are getting used to data. There are platforms which are coming. They are getting digital prescription tools, right? Our data is democratic, right? Data is so cheap and freely available that people can do that. In the US, even for an SMS, you pay money. Today, I don't remember since the last 5 years when anybody ever paid a single rupee for SMS.
Sure.
The cost, I don't think you can. I mean, people talk of, hey, in Singapore you can open up companies and all of that. I don't know of many countries where you can open up a bank account today on your digital banks in under 10 minutes. Where else can you do something like this?
Sure. Noted. Siddharth, I think PharmEasy has become a big platform. How can early stage entrepreneurs, and you have this the principle of partnership wherever possible, how can early stage entrepreneurs come and benefit from the PharmEasy ecosystem and the platform that they've created? Like, what are the three areas where you're looking for people to come and partner with you? As Dream 11 has set up a $200 million sports education and fitness fund, is PharmEasy also thinking in that direction?
Principally, yes, we are thinking in that direction. We've not earmarked it or called it out, but principally, yes. But I think funding is just one part of it, right? I think the areas where a lot of partnerships can happen is today if there is a new consumer brand, right, which is in the wellness space or an OTC space or an FMCG space, people don't realize that a large part of FMCG sales also happens through pharmacy, right? Your soaps, shampoos, toothpaste go through pharmacies, not just kirana stores. If somebody wants to come and partner us, we can offer plug and play to reach 80,000 retailers in one go, right? You partner with us, I can offer you same day delivery in about 80 cities of India to the consumer. I can offer you next day delivery almost pretty much, or in 48-hour delivery pretty much across the country, right? So we can take away the entire headache of inventory management, distribution, go-to market for a lot of these new, young, upcoming brands and companies, right? And we are doing some very, very deep partnerships in that area, right? A lot of people want to build upon data analytics, consumer insights. Today, we have a vast number of those available to be done on our platform, right? Right, you want to understand that how are retailers procuring, what are the purchase patterns. We do that, right? Today, there are a lot of people coming up with fintech solutions saying that we want to play the fintech game with retailers. We can give you access to these, right? At the same time, we are seeing a lot of people coming with innovative products on the consumer side, saying that we can take care of outpatient health in this way, we can do this, we can do plug and play home services. All of these are available, right? Today, people associate us with all things healthcare digitally in the B2B and the B2C space, right? And I think we are very open to providing partnerships and even at the right time, even infusing capital in these companies and providing them a platform to grow, right? So it's not public yet, but we are already investing in 2 or 3 platforms in a small capacity. But the idea is we don't want to go into platforms just for the sake of investment. We are not an investment company, right? We are basically a platform, but other people can come and start leveraging us, right? And it can start with a transactional relationship that can go into a strategic relationship, and at the right time we are also very open and very keen to look at partners where we can even deploy our capital.
Got it. Siddharth, I just wanted to shift focus to, you have created a infrastructure for healthcare, or a new age infrastructure for healthcare, as you said, which I think overlays to the weaknesses or the fragmentations of the physical infrastructure that existed, and created a digital layer on the top of it. How would you advise people to think from a brand perspective for a product first brand? For example, there are certain companies that you keep on guiding from time to time who would be product first, right? So what is your framework of thinking over there from a company perspective, brand perspective, distribution perspective, capital efficiency perspective?
So you mean by a product, you mean like a physical, like a FMCG product kind of a product?
Yeah,
Or
for example, take like aligners or anything else. So which are, where product is a differentiation, and how does one approaches that?
so look, I think somebody said this: if product is differentiation, then distribution is key, right? Because if you have a differentiated product, you want to go to market as fast as you can and to as many more number of people as you can before somebody else comes in, right? And if product is a commodity, then distribution is the USP, right? Because today anybody and everybody can, let's say hypothetically, everybody is making a soap, right? And your product is not differentiated, right? Then your reach of distribution and your brand positioning is the key, right? But if your product is differentiated, if you have, let's say, a Tesla, I mean, just as an example, today there is a almost like an unlimited demand for Teslas, right? It's the pace at which you can distribute and you can make production happen that is very important, right? So to come back to the point, I think for people who have the ability to make a differentiated product, I think please do not worry on recreating the distribution channel, right? You need to go to market fast and swiftly. Partner with somebody, partner with digital platforms like ours, partner with if you are a product which is absolutely OTC, go ahead and partner with platforms like Amazon and the Flipkarts of the world. Create your own D2C platform. But even when you create your own D2C platform, don't worry about doing the logistics yourself and the warehousing yourself, right? Try and look for partners. Your focus has to be to create the maximum number of products that you can, reach the maximum number of people, and leave the operational consequences or the operational issues around how will it get there and what rate will it get there to somebody else, right? Your job only has to be get the customer, get the order, and create the product, right? How do you get it, right? How do you get it in 24 hours to, let's say, in some zip code in in Bengal, or some zip code in Gujarat, or some zip code in Tamil Nadu, or some zip code in Jammu and Kashmir? For all of these, right, partner with people who have the ability to do that, right? Please don't, I know it will cost you some money, but if your product is good enough and it reaches more and more people, you will find that your cost, because you will have significantly higher margins, you will be able to curtail those costs later, right? And I have seen that so many very times that people have not been able to get the product to market fast, right? And the other important thing is, uh, those of you who are creating digital first and digital native brands, you will realize that as you expand your scope of influence of marketing, your cost will come down. So if you want to market only to people in Mumbai, your cost is higher. And with the same category, you say I want to market to people across Maharashtra, the cost will be half. And if you say I want to market to people across the country, your cost will be maybe less than one fourth, right? With the same parameters, right? So you will say male, SCCA, so on and so forth, should have this, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? But you just remove the geographical filters, your cost will keep coming down, right? So people don't realize, people feel, hey, you know what, I will create this D2C brand, but I will control the entire operations and I will only restrict myself to Mumbai. Partner with somebody else for the operations, focus on the brand, your CAC will come down. You will more than enough make up the money you're giving to an operations partner, you will more than enough make up for it by reducing your CAC. At least that's what we've seen.
Sure. I think building on that further, Siddharth, in the journey of a venture, there are certain channels which are more efficient at that point of time. How has that journey been for PharmEasy? You focused possibly on performance marketing, then you focused on brand marketing, then when you went to offline channels, how to think through that as a brand evolves in its journey?
So look, I think a lot of, there's no right answer, right? I think it's a function of the kind of product that you have, right? If you are a product that needs to have some experience, you may want to look at some physical touch points, right? If you're a product which is, product is a commodity, but you have a different go-to market, right? Or a different brand proposition, you are absolutely fine just being digital, right? But general advice is start digital, grow digitally till you reach a critical mass before you want to go physical, right? Physical will give you better recall, but physical is generally more expensive than digital. That's VR experience.
Well, Siddharth, I think very few people understand capital allocation. I have seen that you understand it fairly well. What is your framework for capital allocation? How have you thought about capital allocation in PharmEasy, in Ascent? How has that framework evolved as you have ventured in this journey?
I think the most important thing is generally, right? First, invest in your product, then in your go-to market, and only then look at some of the frills, right, that you want to do. I'll give you an example. The first time we ever did a TV ad for PharmEasy was only in October 2018, right?
Hmm.
If I look back, it's actually been only 2.5 years in a company which is 9 years old. You look at most other companies or most of our competitors, see today people are getting capital and they're able to go to market faster. But at that time, we were actually 2 years behind each of our competitors in going on a TVC. The reason being we were establishing our backend and ability to serve customers really well. Right now, in a business like ours, where product is commoditized and distribution is key, we can't spread ourselves too thin. We could not have gone pan India and done ads, right? We had to be present first in a city like Mumbai, prove our model, make that work, grow that, prove that, grow that, right? The best way to kill a business is to market yourself more than what you can deliver, right? That is the best way to kill a business, absolutely the best way, right? Because आप चिल्ला चिल्ला के बोल रहे हो कि आओ 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 मेरे पास and you don't have the ability to fulfill it. That's the best way to kill a business, right? So I would only suggest that you first invest in your team and ensuring that your service experience is great, right? And ideally go about in an iterative model. I've seen a lot of people. Uh, I've seen some companies very closely where they had to choose between inventory and marketing. They actually chose marketing over having the right inventory. If you have the right customer experience, your over a period of time, some of these things really compound. So for PharmEasy, for example, only 10% of our GMV comes from new customers every month. 90% comes from our old customers. That is the level of stickiness on the platform. But that is because the customers that we have, we treat them really well. So everybody finds the sexy part of the business is getting new customer and doing marketing. The tough part of the business is keeping the old ones happy. But if you keep the old ones happy, your business will compound and grow phenomenally well over time.
So just to build on that, Siddharth, if 90% of your customers are, customers who are repeats, how has the customer NPS journey evolved in Pharmacy? Like you said that, the first two areas, the first two avatars for your venture were disasters. You were not able to service what you promised to the customer, or you were limited in your ability. So how have you seen customer NPS evolve? How have you invested in that? If you can run us through that, please.
So our customer NPS has always been one of our North Stars, right, that we focus on. So there was a report undertaken by a firm called Redseer. Redseer, and they actually work with Shadowfax, which is a logistics partner, right? So it was not a report commissioned by us. So Shadowfax and Redseer populate a logistics efficiency and a customer NPS report every year. We actually ranked better than Amazon on 7 of the 8 parameters, right? Because the customers that we have, we will ensure that we'll do everything in order to make them happy, right?
Can you
So
give us examples?
uh, to give you an example, actually the best proof of the pudding is in actually eating it, right? So I request one thing to all the people who are on this platform, right? Do me a favor, right? All of you can spare a couple of thousand rupees. uh,
Yeah.
Please place an order for a OTC product, right? I know maybe you guys don't need medicine, or an OTC product on Pharmacy. Place an order on OTC product on our competitors' platforms, on our peers' platform, right? And place an order for the same or a similar product on Amazon. Amazon will likely promise you next day delivery. Some of our peers will promise you next day or the day after delivery, right? But I can guarantee you, today we are on a Saturday in a city of Mumbai which is under some kind of lockdown or a close down because of containing COVID. I can guarantee you, you will get the products today itself. That is customer excellence. You over deliver on the promises that you've made. And at the same time, now I know people will come and tell me, hey, I can order that product on Swiggy and get it in 30 minutes. Yes, you can. But Swiggy will A, charge you MRP, and B, it will also charge you a delivery fee of 30, 40, 50 rupees on top of it. That right balance of, like I said, of in terms of my savings, my customer experience and convenience, my quality of service, all of that, we believe that we have that right mix, right? That you get your 15% savings or 10% savings, and you don't have to pay an exorbitant delivery fee, and you get it in 3 hours time or 4 hours time. That is the level of service excellence that we aim for. Now, until and unless I can do this service excellence, I will not think of going from, let's say, 100 to 500 cities, right? And that, I think, is a very, very important part, right? That is what you need to do. So it's very easy to say, hey, I want to scale. I can come and tell you I can go to 2 lakh pharmacies tomorrow, right? And I can tell you, hey, I'll go to 500 cities. It's not about that. Numbers to maybe ठोक सकता हूँ यार. It's about the place where you are. How consistent will you be in what you have promised?
So Siddharth, can you tell us some decisions that you had to take, either from a capital expenditure perspective, from a difficult decision perspective, like growth is something that you said.
Example, right? I mean, today to go to 500 cities is a very easy decision.
Sure.
But will I be able to live that level of service experience? It's very easy to say कि boss मैं तो IPL में ऐड करता हूँ. I don't know how many of you saw IPL yesterday on Hotstar, right? You will see me on Hotstar. Now Hotstar is being seen by a person in every zip code of the country. It's very easy to say, hey, let's start over there, chalo. Now theoretically, if you place an order in any zip code, I will deliver it. But it's very easy to say, I'll promise 6-hour delivery everywhere. राइट फिर अच्छा किसी को 6 घंटे वाले 24 घंटे ठीक है ना चलता है डोंट मेक अ प्रॉमिस यू कांट डिलीवर राइट नाउ व्हेन आई एम spending or investing so much in marketing it's very easy to say let's expand but you don't want to expand what you can't sustain right so it's very easy to get lured by the decision of yeah let's spend little more and go and spread ourselves too thin I think that is what you want to prioritize right diagnostics to give us an example everybody is telling us diagnostics is the low hanging fruit give it right so our understanding tells us that about 16% of all patients that come to us would ideally need a diagnostic test twice a year less than 4% of that which is about 0.5% or 0.6% of the patients actually take that test from us it's very easy to say since 3 years already let's launch it but do it in a half-hearted manner right Right now, when there is a peak, like I told you, we actually shut it down. No RT-PCR test because I don't want to give you a promise that I can't deliver. I would rather spend and build that network over the next 2 years and then launch it. I
Sure.
think that some of these decisions are very important, which will give you a very good bump initially, but then it'll all be, you'll be in a pathetic position.
Understood. And apart from growth, I think what are the other things that you had to do to ensure that you manage this form of customer NPS? If you can just take an example where you felt that there's a certain use case that deterred your customer NPS, but things that you did, infrastructures that you built to be able to deliver that.
So to give you an example, an open bag policy, right? Uh, or So with an open bag policy, we actually insist that at the time of the delivery, the customer can have a look at the medicines that have been delivered, right? Because often patients ने बोला होगा कि सर मुझे 5 मिलीग्राम की दवाई चाहिए, फिर अगले दिन डॉक्टर ने बोल दिया नहीं नहीं अभी 5 मिलीग्राम नहीं, आप एक काम करो आप 10 मिलीग्राम ले लो, right? You ordered 5 milligram the previous day, next day it is 10 milligram, right? Rather than that patient keeping that medicine with him and then returning the next day, we tell sir अभी आप देख लो check कर लीजिए, no problem, I will create that reverse logistics for you, right? Or, or for example, delivery of insulin. We ensure that in the delivery of insulin, and people who order with us, it will come in with a cold pack, right? Now you may think कि अरे 3 दिन के बाद रह सकता है. You go to most of the chemist, मतलब you don't रात को इलेक्ट्रिसिटी स्टोर चालू रहता है, उसका नहीं रहता है, एसी वाला होता है, थोड़ी वो पूरा रात एसी चालू रखता है केमिस्ट अपना, राइट? सुबह जब चालू है तब चालू है, जब रात को बंद है तब एसी तो बंद हो जाता है, फ्रिज चलो फिर भी चालू रहेगा. बट टेम्परेचर कंट्रोल ऑफ सम ऑफ दीज थिंग्स, नाउ दीज आर ऑल कॉस्ट आइटम्स, right? But you build that gives trust to the customer. We have seen so many of our customers who are diabetics now finding it difficult to buy insulin from the regular chemist because they're like, यार ये आदमी ने whether he's kept the thing temperature control or no, I don't know. I am sure a very large part of it are completely compliant, but I am sure there are black sheep in every part, every business, every trade. But then you start building that trust कि यार यहाँ से आया है ना तो temperature controlled है ये. Because at the time of delivery the temperature is controlled and there is an ice pack. Now these are small things, subtle things that give you that confidence कि नहीं यार this guy is delivering what he's saying, right? For example, every medicine that we have, we stick our unique barcode on it. Can you believe it? We are in this unique country where toothpaste के ऊपर barcode है but दवाई के ऊपर barcode नहीं, right? It is so funny. It is tragic. We said do hell with it. If the industry doesn't want to put a barcode, we will put a barcode. Every medicine that you buy will have a QR code, and that QR code internally will trace who is the manufacturer from whom we bought, which warehouse did it come, which retailer did it go to, which delivery boy touched it, and which customer got it. You can completely track and trace, and that barcode is also unique at the SKU level. So if there are 10 strips of Crocin of one batch that have come from one manufacturer, all of those 10 strips will have a unique barcode. I can track it at a strip level, which pharma companies also don't do. Now these are small things, but this is what gives trust to people.
मी खाऊ मग तुला भरू. हाँ तोपर्यंत चालू कर खायला, चालेल?
Sorry for that. Siddharth, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries.
But very interesting, Siddharth. But when you pivoted towards that, you would be small for some of the pharma companies. So how did you enable that to happen?
No. So we've created our own barcoding system in our warehouse. We don't rely on anybody else, right? I mean, sometimes you say, okay, I'll take up this challenge. So every medicine that comes, we print our barcode and we stick it on our medicine, right? So even if it is a Crocin medicine, I will stick a barcode for my track and trace. Even if that company doesn't create a barcode or print a barcode, that's fine. That's their lookout. I mean, they go by their standards. I go by my standards.
Fair. Siddharth, I just wanted to talk about the future and also scale from some perspective. I think yesterday with Sandeep, we were discussing Tencent was some $2 billion when Hill House invested in it in 2004, and now it is about 200 times of the size of that. First of all, congratulations! I think you've announced a new fundraise. How do you see PharmEasy from here in 5 years? What are the key blocks? Where are you looking to? What are the kind of capabilities which you're trying to build? Whatever I think you are at the liberty of sharing with the audience over here, so that they get a perspective of how the next 5 years of PharmEasy will look like. How do you imagine scale? What are the challenges that you perceive? How are you thinking of navigating those?
Yes, I think in a way what we started with, what we're doing today, and what we want to do in the future continues to remain the same. That, but the most important thing is we want to move on from being a pharmacy, right? That is the idea, right? And that outpatient healthcare, maybe and sorry if I'm repeating this for the nth time, but we want to straddle across the entire gamut of a patient's lifetime, which is across information, consultation, test, and medicine, right? And we are building huge capabilities for that. And we believe that in the future, and I don't know, maybe this is 3 years out or 5 years out, we will actually be in a position to launch outpatient health insurance. And what I mean by that is that today, all health insurance only covers your cost when you go to a hospital. So I think it's a tragic thing that our industry is such where I pay a premium, and let's say yes, you also pay the premium, and we're of the same age. If you take care of all your health for the next 25 years, take your medicines, go to the doctor, do your tests, so on and so forth, your insurance will pay you zero, right? And I don't take care of my health. I smoke, I drink, I have fatty food, I don't take care of my health, I do everything possible which is wrong. And after 15 years, God forbid, I get a heart attack. And maybe both of us still survive till 80, but at the age of 50, I need to undergo bypass surgery. And I have a 15 lakh rupee ka bill, the insurance will pay my 15 lakh rupees. But you spend 30,000 on taking care of your health for the next 10 years, insurance will pay you zero, right?
Hmm.
I think that has to change. If people have to remain healthy, they cannot keep paying out of pocket to keep themselves healthy. Your insurance has to cover that, right? Which is what is happening in most parts of the world. I think in India it is not happening because insurance requires adjudication. Whether a claim is true or false, it has to have verification. Now, what has happened in banking on digitization, that has not happened in insurance. And outpatient insurance has different stakeholders. There is not one is to many. It's not one bank with 100 million customers. It's many to many. You can go to any pharmacy, you can go to any doctor, so on and so forth. That will only happen when this digital network becomes all encompassing. Which is where we believe from the producer to the pharmacy to the patient and the practitioner, everybody has to become digital, right? It's almost like if you look back 10 years when you went to a hospital for IPD insurance also, you got your admission done, then you sent your papers and you got a check. Now it happens cashless. Where does it happen cashless? In those hospitals which have a digital system which will digitally put your claim. Now, until and unless all your pharmacies, all your doctors, and all your patients are not digital, you can't do real-time adjudication. It can't become cashless. Otherwise, you'll pay 1,000 rupees, and then you'll have to file a large claim to claim those 1,000 rupees, which you won't do. It'll be a lot of friction. But we believe that OPD insurance is here to come, and that will change the way Indians access healthcare. Right? Ideally, your insurance is supposed to prevent you from going to hospitals, not reward you कि अच्छा hospital जाओ तो मैं पैसा दूंगा वरना तब तक जो भी claim भरा ना वो सब मेरा profit हो गया. Right?
So, Siddharth, what are the other elements that you look at? Because I think in a couple of your thoughts which you have shared, you feel that you want to be a part of the larger healthcare revolution. Where do you think India should be in 5 years from a healthcare perspective? And what are the three levers? Maybe outpatient insurance would be one, but what are the other levers that, India as a country should do, and what Pharmacy as as one of the largest platforms of healthcare in the country would enable?
So I think number one theme is digitization, right? I think digitization will allow for significant understanding of patient data. And once patients know more about themselves and people like insurers know more about themselves, they will be able to underwrite some of these things, right? And universal outpatient healthcare will become the norm, right? And I think for that, so I would say digitization is one part. I think insurance is the second part. And I think the third is we moved from a company which had infectious diseases to chronic diseases, right? Now most of the diseases in India are non-communicable, right? So you don't hear obviously people get malaria and so on and so forth, right? But a very large number of people have hypertension, diabetes, so on and so forth. But I think third is move from illness to wellness, right? As we become more proactive in managing our health, right? And I think you've seen a large part of that catalyst and trigger in COVID, राइट? आई मीन पीपल आज लोग बोलते हैं वो मैं अपना काढ़ा पीता हूँ, मैं च्यवनप्राश लेता हूँ, ये करता हूँ, वो करता हूँ. All of these things are that, right? मैं तुलसी लेता हूँ, मोरिंगा लेता हूँ. All of this is that you start approaching your health from the perspective of being well and not just health कि मैं बीमार होऊंगा तब मैं कुछ करूँगा, right? And I think this goes back to actually अपने देश में तो wellness था ही था. अपना entire Ayurveda is based on wellness, right? I think, but now people have to start. I mean, it's a funny thing, right? We accept what the West accepts of us, right? But I think now the acceptance of wellness overall, I think, is going to play a big role, right? Because generally, if you are well, you feel mentally healthy and physically fit. You start seeing digitization, and then you start seeing universal outpatient healthcare. I think these are the three big levers that I would bet on for the next few years.
Very interesting. And Siddharth, how do you think that one should participate in this opportunity as an early stage entrepreneur in all of these three segments? Because I think I would assume that these three are the biggest healthcare trends or disruptions that you would say, which would give an opportunity for entrepreneurs to build something. So how would you suggest that people should participate in this opportunity?
Look, I don't have specifics, but I can say that it's absolutely fine. I mean, markets that earlier people thought were very small are going to become increasingly large in the future, right?
Hmm.
And there is a very famous quote from Steve Jobs, right? That people don't know that they need the iPhone till you give them an iPhone, right? I think likewise it's happening in similarly in multiple categories. I think we are a country where because of data and digitization, your go-to market is very fast. You don't have to be uh, entitled historically to be able to make something big or do something big, right? Most of our tech entrepreneurs, if you see, are all first generation entrepreneurs. And I think that power is today there with everybody. You have a good idea, you have a good product. I think you should just try it out, right? I think there's no better thing than taking that first step. Uh, Today the access to venture capital and seed capital is significantly better than where it was in the past, right? And I think if you put these two together, I would just say just go ahead and start something and see how it works out, right? I think there are multiple opportunities, but the only underlying theme is a lot of markets that people did not know existed or don't think exist today will be massively large 5 years down the line, right?
Can you give us one, two examples, Siddharth?
Uh, Take the edtech market for example, right?
So in healthcare, if you can give us an example.
uh, Multiple areas, right? I mean, if you look at healthcare today, there are nutraceutical brands in healthcare uh, that are doing 100 crores plus in terms of sales that are just 2 years old and have spent maybe just like 30 crores on creating the brand. Who would have thought that in 30 crores you can create a 100 crore brand in a span of less than 2 years, right? And there's a company called Oziva, which is doing phenomenally well,
Sure.
and it's a nutraceutical brand, right? So this is just one example of where things are happening, right? There is another brand that I know again in wellness that is creating healthy cookies and healthy ice creams and so on and so forth in Delhi, and they were a 50 lakh investment. They're already doing 50 lakhs of monthly sales, so they've created a 6 crore brand in 50 lakhs in 2 months, right? And this is just examples of products that are doing. I'm sure that today examples of services. Today Plum has come about and I hear great things about them, which is creating or completely changing the way corporate wellness and corporate insurance is working, right? And it's $100 million enterprise in less than 2 years. So the speed and pace at which people are working is just phenomenally outstanding these days.
I would like to compliment you on that, Siddharth. I think what you've created in 8 years, the number of stakeholders that you've managed, and I think on this forum we have some of your customers, someone who are brick and mortar chemists, someone who has used Pharmacy, who had been giving you compliments on this. So thank you so much for inspiring so many people around.
Thank you so much, Yash. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Siddharth. Guys, I think for people who have been regular attendants of this, next Friday and Saturday, we have two very interesting speakers. Siddharth, another speaker in the, I think, health space is Zeno Health, which is coming on the platform as well in the following sessions. I think, but again, thank you so much for taking out the time on a Saturday morning. I know you've been very busy with everything around. Congratulations for all the traction at PharmEasy and for the plans ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and all the very best to everybody. All right.
Thanks, Matt.